Try hitting on some girls. Impossible for a middle school graduate, huh? It was James, a middle school classmate, who said this to me. James always looked down on me for being a middle school graduate, and he never missed an opportunity to harass me like this. Until today, I couldn't talk back to James, but today is different. In front of everyone, I made up my mind and said to James, "She's actually my secretary and my wife." I'll never forget that the murmurs of the people around us and James's expression at that moment. My name is Michael. I'm turning 36 this year. I married Sarah 6 years ago, and today was our wedding anniversary. I met her at work. She's kind, independent, and yet stunningly beautiful enough to turn heads. I often think she's too good for me. When I get home, there's always a warm meal waiting for me, and the house is spotless, down to every corner. I have such a perfect family life and a fulfilling job in logistics. Though the early days were tough, I've come a long way. I lost my father when I was in the 7th grade of middle school, and then my mother collapsed from overwork. There wasn't much I could do back then, but by working right after graduating from middle school, I managed to support my mother somehow. I had a dream university I wanted to attend, but my situation made it impossible. The thought of working right after middle school was unimaginable, and despite being discouraged by everyone around me, my determination to support my mother got me through it. At first, I resented my circumstances, but now, my struggles makes me appreciate the ordinary things in life. Having food to eat every day and having loved ones by my side are my greatest happiness. That's the most important thing to me. Yet, in our society, not everyone feels this way. There are people who can't see the happiness in front of them and try to find their own happiness by looking down on others. A typical example was James, my middle school classmate. James was essentially considered a leader of our class, fearless during our middle school days. Not only by classmates but also by seniors, he was held in high regard. However, this recognition seemed to get to his head, turning him into a rather unpleasant person over time. He would loudly mock anyone who made a mistake and would barrage those who displeased him with verbal abuse, subjecting them to various forms of harassment. Luckily, I was a rather inconspicuous student, so I managed to avoid becoming a target of his harassment and lived peacefully throughout my 3 years of middle school. However, everything changed after graduation. Since I started working right after middle school and didn't have much free time to hang out with my classmates, I really wanted to attend the reunion. It was the only chance I had to interact with people of my age, and I wanted to catch up with my friends. 24 years after graduating from middle school, the reunion was organized. It was meant to be a gathering of my 8th grade class. Because I was in the same class as James for 3 years, he was also expected to attend. I naively thought that most of us are college students or working adults by now, so James would have matured too. On the day of the reunion, I arrived at the venue earlier than everyone else. While waiting for the others, I saw a man waving from a distance as he approached. "Hey, long time no see." The one waving was James. Since our middle school days, James had grown significantly taller. He has a slender body like a model. He was also wearing a suit, and he looked very intelligent. "Wow, it's been a while. How have you been?" Of course, it seems like I'm the first one here. Although we weren't close in middle school, the reunion sparked conversations about the old days. Despite my previous feelings, talking to James as an adult made me reconsider maybe he wasn't such a bad guy after all. As we chatted, more and more classmates began to arrive. As we entered the restaurant reserved by the organizer, everyone started drinking at the signal for a toast. The reunion took place in a fairly spacious place with private rooms, allowing everyone to stand up and chat with various people. I was also catching up with classmates I hadn't seen in a while, but gradually the atmosphere turned to reminiscing about old time. "By the way, Michael, What were you doing after graduating from middle school? Oh, I started working right after graduation. So, you're a middle school graduate. Actually, this wasn't the first reunion for our 8th grade class, but it was my first time attending. Therefore, almost no one knew what I had been up to since graduating from middle school. And the moment I mentioned I was a middle school graduate, James looked at me with a smirk. Being a middle school graduate is pretty bad, isn't it? We live in an era where educational background is highly valued. In contrast, I went to college and now work as a lawyer. James said it while showing off the badge pinned to his suit. I had heard rumors. James had gone straight to a prestigious university and become a lawyer. Lawyers can easily get women, you know. When I go to a group dating, I'm unstoppable. I'm thinking maybe I could take someone home tonight if there's a chance. Even though we've had a few drinks, this isn't the kind of thing you talk about loudly. Yet, James seems not to care about those around him at all, speaking loudly enough for others to hear. I see. That was all I could respond with. What's with that response? With that attitude, you won't be popular. I mean, being a middle school graduate, you can't be popular anyway. Whether I'm popular or not is beside the point. I'm married actually. Then I showed off the ring on my left ring finger. Seriously, you can get married even as a middle school graduate. What kind of person did you marry? Someone much older than you, like your parents? James seemed displeased that I was married and started prying into details about my partner. However, since I don't really enjoy talking about my wife, I was just tuning out James's questions when he started saying this. You're not really married, are you? I'm married. I'm wearing the ring, aren't I? Maybe you're just wearing it for show. He seemed determined to believe I couldn't possibly be popular. I didn't mind him thinking that, but honestly, I wished he would stop bothering me. James seemed to want to talk about himself, not letting others get a word in, and gradually, our classmates moved to other seats, away from him. Being a lawyer is tough, you know. Every day I'm swamped with paperwork and defending clients. I hadn't handled a big case yet, but I'm sure my time will come. He boasted about his achievements and efforts. All he talked about were his own achievements and efforts, nothing but what could only be seen as bragging. By this point, the reunion was winding down, and everyone seemed to be pleasantly buzzed. James was probably drunker than anyone else in the room, as he had had plenty of beer and wine. He seemed bored with talking to me and moved on to our other classmates, who appeared quite annoyed by him. As the reunion came to an end, and we were all too tipsy to notice much, we left the restaurant. I followed my classmates out of the restaurant, and there was a car parked in front of the store. It was a large car, the kind that's referred to as a luxury vehicle, and it was drawing the attention of all my classmates. Wow, that car is amazing. Definitely a luxury car. What kind of job do you need to have to drive something like that? Then, the car door opened, and a woman stepped out. The woman had slender legs peeking out from her skirt, and long hair that flowed down to her waist, fluttering in the wind. The moment she stepped out of the car and took off her sunglasses, she revealed striking eyes that commanded the attention of everyone present. A truly beautiful woman. Whoa, that beautiful lady. I've never seen someone so gorgeous before. While my classmates were buzzing, the woman looked straight at me. Wait, is she looking at me? Could she have fallen for me? I doubt that, I replied. Don't be a buzzkill, and you, try hitting on her. Impossible for a middle school graduate, huh? It seems the word middle school graduate has become material for James to mock me with, and I've lost count of how many times he's said it just today. James is looking at me with a smug expression, nudging me in the ribs with his elbow. This reunion alone had given me more than enough unpleasant feelings. Moreover, due to him not having any cash on hand, I somehow ended up covering James's expenses. The alcohol made me bold, and I found myself saying something unexpected. She's my secretary and wife, you know." The moment I spoke, James's eyes widened in disbelief, looking at me as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What are you talking about? That joke isn't funny at all. There's no way someone like you could have any connection with such a beautiful woman. If you think it's a lie, you can ask her yourself." "Humph. Instead of that, I'll go and hit on her. Just watch, I'll definitely succeed." Ignoring my words completely, James walked towards the woman. He should have stopped, but why is he so confident in himself? Thinking James was foolish, I decided to watch how things would unfold. "Hey, gorgeous, what are you doing here all by yourself? What's your name? Are you talking to me? There's no one else as beautiful as you here. You were looking at me the whole time, weren't you? Perhaps it was love at first sight. Indeed, beautiful women know how to choose." The woman, with a troubled expression, conversed with James. "I wasn't looking at you, I was looking at my husband." "Husband? You mean you came to pick him up from the reunion?" "Yes, that's right." It seemed James was becoming a nuisance, and the woman's responses gradually became more curt. Feeling sorry for her, I decided to intervene. "Sarah, thanks for picking me up." James turned around to look at me, then back at the woman, his confusion evident. "What do you mean, Sarah? Explain this." "Like I said earlier, she's my secretary and wife." "Your wife, and she's also your secretary?" James's face said he couldn't understand, which wasn't surprising. I had told him about being a middle school graduate, but not about my current job. "I work in logistics, but a few years ago, I started my own company." That was before marrying Sarah, so it's been almost a decade. At that time, I was only 26, when most people were just getting accustomed to their jobs. However, I had been working earlier than anyone else and wanted to achieve something bigger. Using the knowledge and connections I had accumulated, along with my savings, I launched a shipping company. It was challenging at the start, and I couldn't afford to hire other employees, but I managed to keep it going, and now we're successful enough to employ staff. Sarah was hired as a secretary, but as we spent more time together, our relationship deepened, leading to marriage. That's why she continues to work as my secretary, even after our marriage. I explained this to James, but he seemed unable to believe it. He couldn't imagine that the guy he mocked for being a middle school graduate owned his own company. And he must not be able to imagine that the beautiful woman that everyone looks back at was my wife. "Come on, if you knew I was in trouble, you should have come to my rescue sooner." Sorry, I just wanted to tease a bit. Shall we go now?" With that, Sarah and I got into the car. While James and the classmates looked on in astonishment, I waved goodbye. On the way home, I told Sarah about everything that happened at the reunion, and it seems she already dislikes James. "What's with that guy? Behaving too close and familiar for someone I just met. Was he always like that?" "Yeah, he hasn't changed much from back then." "Well, I'm glad you're not friends with someone like that." Sarah doesn't like people who are too close or overly familiar, like James. Feeling guilty for not helping her sooner, I bought her favorite cake on the way home. When we got home, I was bombarded with messages from classmates asking about what happened, keeping me busy with replies. James also sent a message demanding an explanation, but I had nothing more to say and preferred not to talk to him, so I ignored it. And so, the busy days continue. Rather than saying the reunion was fun, I was a bit worn out from James's constant snide remarks. However, if there's another reunion, I'm sure I'd attend. But with work being so busy, I almost started to forget about the reunion altogether. A year had passed since the reunion, and finally, I could take a breather, leading to discussions about going on a trip with Sarah. Since founding the company, taking a long break had been impossible, likely leaving Sarah feeling lonely. The company had grown to the point where it could operate without me, employing about 20 staff members. It's been a while since we've gone on a trip. I'm so excited. There are so many places I want to go. It's hard to choose. Since we took about a week off, we could go anywhere, which made choosing a destination difficult due to the abundance of options. Eventually, we decided on Mexico, as per Sarah's request. We carefully selected the places we wanted to visit and decided to prepare thoroughly. Since both Sarah and I tend to forget things easily, neglecting to prepare in advance would lead to trouble later. Today, while checking for any forgotten items, I realized I didn't have a case for my contact lenses. Though cases can be bought at stores at the destination, a non-disposable case seemed more practical for a long stay, prompting me to rush to a nearby store. That store has everything, and I thought of buying a sleep mask for the plane ride. As I was thinking about this, I quickly arrived at the store. Upon entering, I found it bustling with people and shelves lined with a wide variety of products. Overwhelmed by the selection, I couldn't find what I was looking for and decided to ask an employee, searching the store. After much effort, I finally found an employee and called out to them, only to be shocked when I saw the person's face. Because it was James. I can't seem to find what I'm looking for. Could you help me, please? Sure, what are you looking for? James turned around, surprised upon hearing my voice. James, is that you? Well, you see. Realizing it was me, James looked around nervously, blinking repeatedly. He was supposed to be a lawyer. Why was he here? I forgot what I came to buy, pondering this. James seemed to be thinking hard about something, scratching his head and trying to say something to me. To break the awkward silence, I asked, "Weren't you supposed to be a lawyer?" No, I was asked to help out by an acquaintance. See how busy it is. They were short on staff and really needed the help. According to James, he was only working there temporarily and not officially employed. I wondered if it was okay for a lawyer to have a side job, but decided to keep my doubts to myself. I see, that stuff. I never thought you'd be the type to help out like this. Haha. Despite claiming to be helping due to staff shortages, James seemed to be hiding something. I couldn't help but wonder if the lawyer's story was a lie and he actually worked here. Regardless, I was here to shop, so I told James what I wanted and asked him to show me where to find it. I'm looking for a contact lens case and a sleep mask. Where can I find them? Oh, over here. James seemed to have a softer demeanor than usual, perhaps because other customers were around. Well, that's probably the norm in such settings. He led me through the store, and I was able to find what I needed. Thanks, I couldn't have found it without you. By the way, it's impressive how you know where everything is, even though you're only helping out temporarily. Well, it's not my first time here. I've been here a few times before. Although I couldn't imagine James volunteering for anything, it reminded me that everyone has sides to them that others may not see. I needed to head home soon, so I started walking towards the checkout with the items in my hand. Just then, another employee approached from behind James and placed a hand on his shoulder. James, can you help me with this? The aisle is too narrow to display this item. The moment he was tapped on the shoulder and addressed, James's artificially crafted smile froze. Then, he turned around slowly, like a robot. James, is everything okay? Do you know this person? I'm sorry for interrupting. I'll ask you again later. Before James could respond, the employee hurried away. Caught in an awkward silence, we both stood frozen on the spot. Please don't tell anyone that I'm the store manager here, James said, shoulders slumped and eyes fixed on the floor. I want to hear the whole story, so contact me after work. Okay. After saying that, I purchased the items and went home. A few hours later, James contacted me to say he was off work, so I headed back to the store. How about we go to a cafe nearby? I suggested to James, who was waiting, and we entered a cafe in the same building. Curious about many things, I first asked why James, supposedly a lawyer, was working as a store manager. "Why are you working there?" James, reluctantly at first, took his time to explain. After graduating from middle school, James dedicated himself to his studies from high school onward with the goal of becoming a lawyer. While others were playing, he was studying, and it seems he hardly took any time off to play even during school holidays. As he isolated himself in his studies, friends stopped inviting him out, and he became somewhat of an outsider. Despite this, James's resolve to become a lawyer was unwavering. Even in university, where he prioritized his studies while juggling part-time jobs to afford tuition, he often fell ill or attended lectures sleep-deprived, hindering his academic performance. He struggled with the preliminary exams necessary for the bar exam, failing multiple times without ever passing. Eventually, he gave up on becoming a lawyer. "Why did you want to become a lawyer so badly?" I asked, intrigued by his persistent effort. "It's because my father was wrongfully arrested." "What do you mean?" James shared that during his high school years, his father was wrongfully arrested. The lawyer they hired didn't do his job properly, leading to a guilty verdict. Though the actual time served was about 3 years, having a criminal record proved to be a significant hardship. His father lost his job and struggled to find new employment. Witnessing this, James was determined to become a lawyer to save others from wrongful convictions. Despite his efforts, he couldn't become a lawyer and ended up in his current situation after job hunting. There was no need to lie about being a lawyer, right? I had already told everyone. I can admit I hadn't made it. I knew it was wrong, but I ended up deceiving everyone. James said, sipping the hot coffee that the server had brought him. I drank mighty, unsure of what to say. The James I knew was someone who used harassment and snide remarks, even looking down on me for being a middle school graduate at the reunion. "I understand how tough it's been for you, but why did you harass me?" I wanted to believe I was still better than someone. If there was someone below me, it was reassuring. "I'm truly sorry for that day. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I regret it." James apologized sincerely, leaning on the table in front of him. Owning a company, I believed I had a talent for seeing people's true nature. Yet, seeing James apologize deeply made me question that confidence. I might have been overconfident in myself. "Stop apologizing. I'm not bothered by it anymore. Just live without lying from now on." "I will." We talked a bit more and parted ways after about an hour. Later on, James shared his true situation with our classmates. They were shocked and confused by the deception but appreciated his honesty. Some who had disliked James now wanted to get closer, understanding his circumstances. Just when it seemed things were settling down, James faced the worst situation. He was laid off. The company, not just the store, had been struggling for a while, leading to the closure of all its outlets. Caught off guard, James hadn't been job hunting and was now unemployed, with a pregnant wife to support. Unable to stand by, I decided to call James out for a talk. "Hey, what are you planning to do from now on? You're going to have a child, right? You need to find a job quickly, don't you?" "I know that better than anyone, but no one will hire me. I have no idea what's wrong. I just can't do it anymore." James, once the center of attention, now couldn't lift his gaze, shoulders slumped in defeat. I decided to make him a proposal. "How about you try taking the bar exam again?" "Don't be ridiculous. It's impossible now. It costs money to take the exam, and I've forgotten everything I studied. I'll support you until you get your qualification. How about that?" Even I wasn't sure what I was saying, and I imagine James found it even more incomprehensible. Up to now, I have been focused solely on myself, never really helping anyone else. However, after learning about James's situation in detail, I felt I had discovered something I was lacking. At 26, I had started my own company and became somewhat arrogant as I began employing staff, but there were times when contracts fell through or we struggled to secure a project. I tried to find a cause but could never pinpoint it, leaving me frustrated. Sarah probably knew the reason, but I wanted to realize it on my own and thus didn't seek her advice. From James's situation, I learned I was lacking kindness. Focused primarily on profits, I had forgotten to be considerate of others, resulting in unstable business relations and unsuccessful endeavors. I realized something thanks to you. You can do more, James. With a chance right in front of you, is it okay to give up here? After pondering for a while with his head in his hands, James finally muttered softly, "All right, I'll give it another try." From then on, James dedicated himself to studying for the bar exam. I provided the necessary funds for the qualification and minimal living expenses. Friends asked me the reason I went to such lengths. Indeed, we weren't particularly close. In fact, I think I disliked James. From an outsider's perspective, it was hard to understand why I would help him to such an extent. Certainly, realizing something important for James played a part. But there was another reason. My parents had also been falsely accused once. I had never told anyone, but my father worked as an accountant. During his tenure, an embezzlement case occurred. My father, responsible for money management, was the first to be suspected and spent some time away from home. I was only a primary school student but understood that we were caught in a serious situation. The stress from that time caused my father to collapse, and he never returned home. Seeing my past in James, I couldn't help wanting to assist him. My father was irreplaceable to me. Despite being busy, he found time to play with me, and we never struggled financially until his passing. So, I understood James's situation well, struggling financially because his father couldn't find a job after being unable to re-employ. Eventually, James passed the preliminary examination with great effort, and he smoothly cleared the bar exam as well. On the day the bar exam results were announced, James was the first to contact me. "Hello, is this Michael? I did it, I finally passed. It's all thanks to you." "That's great, really great." Despite being adults, we both ended up crying over the phone. I remember going to a bar afterward and drinking a lot. I'm not much of a drinker, but I drank too much in my joy. Being unable to go home on my own, Sarah reluctantly came to pick me up by car, a bit resistant since I was drinking with James. But I thought her opinion of James would change once she met him now. I'm truly sorry for that time. I've been nothing but helped by Michael. I'll work hard to repay the favor, so please continue to take good care of Michael. Despite being drunk, James smoothly said these words in front of Sarah. I was a bit embarrassed but couldn't hide my happiness at his words. Sarah, trying to hide her embarrassment with a laugh, glanced at me and then spoke to James. "Of course, leave it to me." On the way home, Sarah mentioned that her impression of James had changed. Some time later, James offered to return the favor. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he insisted on doing something. "What do you plan on doing as returning a favor? Aren't you currently in trouble because you don't have a lawyer?" I heard from Sarah. "When did she?" In fact, there was an issue with lost cargo that needed to be transported, and we were in the midst of figuring out who was responsible. The loss occurred after delivery, but given the high value of the products, the other party wanted us to pay damages. However, without concrete evidence, the lawyers said there was little they could do, leaving us in a difficult situation. James asked to see the information we had stored on paper and computers, so I decided to hand over everything we had. After looking through everything, there's no problem at all, Michael. You haven't done anything wrong, so stand firm. True to his word, James proved our innocence and saved the company from a crisis. Thank you so much. It would have been tough if we had to pay compensation. It was tens of millions of dollars. Well, can I consider my debt repaid with this? Of course, if anything, you've done too much. Afterward, James became the dedicated lawyer for my company. He had just landed a job at a law firm after getting his license, but when I approached him, he immediately agreed to join us. Though we're still getting used to working together, I'm very happy to be working with James. There's still so much to learn, but I hope to grow with the help of those around me. One day, I suddenly fell sick and collapsed. Seeing this, my son Jake told my wife Sarah, "Mom, we need to take him to the hospital." Hearing this, Sarah uttered an unbelievable response. "I have a trip planned, so it's impossible." Lately, Sarah has been spending less time at home. It's been about half a year since I took over my father's job. With everything happening so suddenly, I worried I might be making her put up with too much. I desperately tried my best in both work and parenting. But eventually, I reached my limit and ended up in the hospital. After being unreachable for a few days on her trip, Sarah called, and when Jake answered, she asked, "Where's your dad?" Following that, Jake said something shocking. "My name is David. I turned 42 this year. I got married 8 years ago, and a year later, we had a child, living together as a family of 3. I work as a doctor, originally at a university hospital, but I admired my father's dedication as a local practitioner. Half a year ago, when my father fell sick and considered closing his clinic due to his hospitalization, I decided to resign from the university hospital and take over my father's clinic. He was happy about it. This led us to move from our apartment to my childhood home next to the clinic. The building is old. When I mentioned to my dad that we should consider remodeling it eventually, he told me to go ahead as we pleased. Even after the transition to my generation, the local community continues to rely on us, and I find my work fulfilling every day. Our child is a boy named Jake. I'm the one who chose his name. I want him to grow up to be a well-grounded and reliable person. Even though he's just in first grade now, he already expresses a desire to become a doctor and is learning German. Jake has far exceeded my expectations, becoming a very dependable son. Though he acts more mature than his age to the point of concern, seeing him covered in mud while playing in the park is a comforting reminder that he's still very much a child. My wife Sarah is beautiful but capricious. Lately, it's been troubling that she's not very willing to help with household chores or parenting. In the beginning of our marriage, we shared household duties and both engaged in parenting, but for the past 6 months, she has hardly been involved at all. Sometimes, she'll take Jake to the convenience store, but it's always me who takes him to parks and other play areas. I don't mind that, but since we've had fewer family outings recently, I suggested we all go out today. "Hey, we haven't been out together much recently. How about we go out next weekend? You haven't been spending much time with Jake, have you?" "It can't be helped because I'm busy." "Jake wants to go to the movies. How about we go together on weekend? After that, we can have dinner at a restaurant." "The movies, huh?" Sarah checked her phone briefly before replying. "Well, I guess that's fine. I don't have any plans." "Great. Jake will be so happy. Thank you. I'm going to take a bath and head to bed." "Okay, got it." Sarah left the living room with her phone. I really want to talk more with Sarah. I want to go out and do things together like we used to. We used to talk about the future and go out together. But today was good. I'm honestly surprised because she usually declines my invitations. But I was so happy she agreed that I immediately told Jake, who was in his room. "On weekend." "Jake, are you ready?" "Yes, all set. I'm ready anytime." "Great, we're just waiting on Sarah." "Jake, where's Mom?" "I don't know. Ever since Jake started elementary school, He wanted his own room, so we've all been sleeping separately. I knocked on Sarah's room door but got no response. I knocked again and slowly opened the door. "Sarah, are you here?" When I opened the door, Sarah wasn't there. Maybe she's in the bathroom. Just then, my phone rang and it was Sarah. "Sarah, what's up with the call?" "Sorry, but I can't make it today. Something came up at work." "What? You didn't mention that yesterday." "That's because it came up suddenly. Just go to the movies, the two of you. It's not a problem even if I'm not there, right? Bye." She said hurriedly and then hung up. Seriously, I thought we could all go together. "Dad, what's wrong? Where's Mom?" "Mom has to work, so it'll just be the two of us." "Okay, I understand." Jake looked a bit sad but then smiled. I felt sorry that he was looking forward to it, but let's make the best of it, just the two of us. "All right, Jake, let's go. After the movie, how about we eat your favorite hamburgers on the way back?" "Yes." We packed our bags and drove to the station where the cinema is located. Several hours later. "Did you have fun, Jake?" "Yes, it was fun. Thanks for today, Dad." "Sure, let's go again sometime." When Jake and I returned home in the evening, Sarah was already back. "We're home. How was your day? We ended up going to the park and other places in the afternoon, so sorry we're late." "It's fine." Sarah responded indifferently as usual. Jake then quietly approached her. "Here, this is a gift for you, Mom." Saying so, he took something out of his backpack. "What is this?" "Today, there was a keychain making workshop, and I made one for everyone. This one's for you." Saying that, he handed her a white star-shaped keychain. Before going to the park, we stopped by a craft workshop nearby, and Jake wanted to try it, so he made keychains for all three of us. By the way, Jake's was green, and mine was blue. Sarah took the gift from Jake. It turned out well, didn't it? It was then that Jake said with a happy face, "Well, I don't think I'll wear it, but I'll keep it for now. I'm tired, so I'll be in my room." Saying so, Sarah left the living room. "Sarah." I couldn't stand her manner of speaking and followed her. "Sarah, wait. Jake made it with so much effort. You shouldn't speak like that," I said in a voice that Jake couldn't hear. "I didn't say I didn't want it, did I?" "Sarah, can't you spend more time at home? There are things I want to talk about." "I've told you before, I don't want to stay in this old, moldy place. Why did you quit the university hospital?" "That's because." I tried to talk, but Sarah locked herself in her room. Sarah seems to dislike the fact that I decided to move here. I begged her to come, and now we're here. I understand that I'm asking for her patience, and I want to discuss it, but this is the situation we're in. Even if she doesn't like it, she didn't have to say that about something Jake worked hard to make. With mixed feelings, I returned to the living room where Jake was. Maybe I should have chosen something different for Mom. Jake seemed a bit down. "Jake, Mom is just tired from work. I will put it on my work bag. What about you, Jake?" "I think I'll put it on my backpack." Jake smiled brightly. Sarah's attitude must make him feel lonely. It wasn't like this before. It feels like she's become more distant since we moved here. This can't go on. I need to have a proper talk for Jake's sake. A few days later, when I finished work and returned home at night, Jake was waiting while watching TV. "Sorry I'm late, Jake. I got caught up talking with a patient. I'll make dinner right away." "Dad, how was your day?" "It's okay. Oh, I folded the laundry for you." "Wow, thanks, Jake." Jake often takes the initiative to do things like laundry and vacuuming. I only let him cook when I'm with him, as it's still dangerous for him to do it alone. Jake is really becoming responsible. Dad. Oh, sorry, I'll get ready now. I can help you, too. After putting down my things, Jake and I started preparing dinner together. What do you want to do tomorrow, Jake? I have the afternoon off, so we can do anything you like. All right, I'll think about it. Good. Tomorrow is Jake's birthday. Sarah should definitely know. I emphasized it again yesterday, telling her to buy the gift for Jake, so it should be fine. Of course, I've prepared something too, but I'm worried if he'll like it. The next morning. Sarah must have come home late last night again. I can hear some noise from her room, so she must be there. I knocked twice. When she responded in a low voice, I opened the door to find her still in her pajamas, holding her cell phone. What? I'll be working until noon, so please take care of Jake. And did you get him a birthday gift? Also, don't forget we're going out in the afternoon. I know, okay. You don't have to tell me multiple times. Close the door when you're done. Sarah responded irritably, then went back to looking at her phone, so I gently closed the door as she asked, "Is everything really going to be okay?" I left feeling a mix of anxiety and hope, leaning more towards hope. When I went to the living room, Jake was already there. "Happy 7th birthday, Jake. Here's your birthday present." "Dad, thank you. Can I open it?" "Go ahead." Jake excitedly opened the bag. "Wow, yes, amazing." The present I gave Jake was a stethoscope I used to use. This stethoscope was given to me by my father when I was a child. I remember I was just as happy as Jake now. I had shown it to Jake before, and he really liked it, so I decided to pass it on to him. But I didn't want to give him just that, so I included a soccer ball as well. "Is it okay to get 2 presents? Just take good care of them, okay?" "Sure." Seeing him like this reminds me he's still very much a child. "Then, let's do whatever you want today. I'll finish up work quickly and come back, so wait with Mom, okay?" "Dad, make sure you do your work properly." "Yes, I'll work hard and seriously." After feeding Jake breakfast, I called out to Sarah before heading to work at the clinic next door. Past noon. When I finished work and returned home, I found Jake alone in the living room. "Where's your mom?" "She went out a little while ago." "What?" "She told me to wait here because you would be back soon." I immediately called Sarah on her cell phone. "Yes." Sarah responded with her usual irritable tone. "Sarah, why aren't you here?" "I had something come up. I'll be back by tonight." "Tonight? Today is Jake's birthday, you know that, right? Didn't we agree to go out together in the afternoon?" As I was scolding her over the phone, Jake shook his head vigorously. It seemed like he was saying it's okay. "All right, just make sure you come back tonight, got it?" "Okay, bye then." She hung up the phone. I was frustrated, but today is Jake's birthday. I decided to focus solely on Jake. "Jake, what is your plan today?" "I want to play soccer, and I want to eat your hamburgers." "Is that what you want?" When I asked, Jake nodded emphatically. So, Jake and I spent the day doing things he enjoys, like playing soccer and visiting a bookstore. On our way back, we bought lots of foods like cake and chicken. When the hamburgers were about to be ready, I checked my phone to contact Sarah and saw a message from her. "I'll be home by the end of the day." That's what the message said. Seeing that message somehow made me feel a wave of exhaustion wash over me. Jake, noticing something was off, spoke to me. "Dad, are you okay?" "No problem, the hamburgers are ready, so why don't we eat? We've got cake too." Of course, I'll eat. Jake and I celebrated his birthday by eating hamburgers and chicken, and talking about school, soccer, and his language lesson. The next morning, I woke up just before noon, feeling exhausted. Oh no. I quickly got dressed and left my room, only to run into Sarah. Sarah, what happened yesterday? Jake was waiting for you the whole time. I came back within the day. You two were just asleep, weren't you? Besides, I'm in a hurry. Sarah rushed off to the bathroom in a flurry. I could only sigh in dismay. And I had a feeling that I was not in the best of health. When I slowly made my way to the living room, Jake was there. Jake, sorry for my waking up late. You must be hungry, right? You could have woken me up. It's okay. I ate some bread. Is that so? Sorry. I felt guilty towards Jake. This had never happened before. I was about to make some coffee, pouring water into the pot to boil, when it happened. My vision blurred, and I felt so dizzy I couldn't stand. At that moment, I dropped the mug I was holding, and it shattered loudly on the floor. Dad, are you okay? The moment I heard Jake's voice, I collapsed. Dad, are you okay? Dad. Jake, sorry. Call your mom. Got it. Just as Jake was about to go get Sarah, the living room door opened and Sarah walked in. Jake quickly ran up to her and said, Mom, we need to take him to the hospital. What's with this sudden? Dad collapsed. Help. In response to Jake's desperate plea, even Sarah would surely come to help. I believed this, faintly aware in my fading consciousness. But Sarah's response was completely unexpected. I have a trip planned, so it's impossible. What? But Daddy's. He'll get better soon. Besides, I'm going on a trip with my parents for about 4 days. Take care, okay? Sarah said this to me with a slightly cheerful voice as I lay there. Mom. Jake, I'll bring you a souvenir, so wait here with Dad, like good boys. With those words, Sarah left. Can such a thing really happen? Leaving behind her husband who can't move and 7-year-old son. But right now, more important than anything, I need to let someone know, for Jake's sake. I pulled out the cell phone I had tucked into my pants, and at that moment, I lost consciousness. A few days later, I woke up in a hospital bed. Dad. Jake. Next to me stood Jake, a doctor, and a few of our neighbors. As I looked around, unable to grasp what had happened, the doctor explained to me. You collapsed due to anemia, and it seems you were quite exhausted as well. Is that so? Thank you for your help. As I thanked him while lying down, the doctor shook his head and kindly explained the situation. You should thank your son. He used your cell phone to call an ambulance and your neighbors. What? Jake did that all by himself? Yes. Remember, Dad, you taught me the emergency number, right? Right. Thank you, Jake. I patted Jake's head, and he looked back at me with strong eyes. I always knew he was reliable, but I hadn't realized just how much he had grown. I felt sorry for the neighbors and Jake, but I was happy to learn about my son's growth. A few days later, my phone kept ringing, so I was reluctantly about to answer, but after all Jake answered it. Mom, what's going on? Jake, it's not what's going on. Where are you? Where? Where's your dad? Ignoring Sarah's frantic tone, Jake uttered some shocking words. Dad has gone far away. What? What do you mean far away? I'm at the restaurant near our house. Bye. Restaurant? Oh, wait. Ignoring Sarah's words, Jake hung up the phone. A few minutes later, Sarah hurried into the restaurant and sat down in front of Jake. Jake, and you're here too. Jake said you'd gone far away in a gloomy voice. What? You thought something happened to me after I collapsed? What? No, I was just worried. Sarah looked a bit embarrassed and looked down. Because Dad went to the faraway bathroom. Jake explained with an upward glance. Really? You're so confusing. But more importantly, the house. Why is our house gone? Sarah's panic was not just because she thought I had disappeared, but also because the house we had lived in was gone. Actually, I had been considering remodeling our house for some time. However, after discussing with my hospitalized father, we decided it would be better to demolish it and rebuild entirely, and he agreed, so we proceeded with that plan. I had wanted to discuss this with Sarah for a long time, but she never seemed willing to listen, so I kept it to myself. Wow, it's going to be a new house. Amazing. You should have mentioned it. I'm totally surprised. Sarah, you are hardly ever home, right? Plus, didn't we discuss rebuilding the house someday when we moved here? Did we? So, when will it be ready? Sarah looked at me with a happy face. She's always been the type to wear her heart on her sleeve, so it's pretty easy to read her. I called neighbors who were with me at the hospital, and they came to the restaurant right away to take care of Jake for a bit. Well then, shall we have a serious conversation now? Oh, about the house for 3 of us. I think it'll be ready within 6 months. Really? But where's all my stuff? Did you store it somewhere? And why not in front of Jake? Well, the conversation we're about to have isn't suitable for Jake to hear. What's with that? You're speaking strangely. Sarah looked at me, puzzled. I've left your stuff at your young lover's place, you know. What? What are you talking about? There's nobody like that at all. I've checked everything, so lying won't work. What? Sarah changed her behavior drastically after we moved, suddenly becoming distant and unexpectedly busy with work, which was unlike her. I always felt something was off. Wondering if she was really busy, I asked my relative who works at the same place as Sarah, only to find out it seems that is not the case. Besides, I never thought Sarah would go on a trip with her parents. She used to say that her parents were quite strict and they hadn't talked much for a long time. Therefore, after I collapsed, I decided to reach out to her parents just once. As expected, they were at home and had no clue about Sarah's whereabouts, prompting me to immediately contact a detective agency to investigate. Just as I suspected, Sarah had another man in her life. It seemed like he was young. This is the evidence of that. Oh, how did it come to this without me noticing? I presented the documents and photos submitted as investigation results in front of Sarah. There was no way she could talk her way out of this. Seemingly thinking the same, Sarah deeply apologized. I'm so sorry. I lost my way. I promise I won't do it again. Please forgive me, okay? We're a married couple, you know. What are you talking about? You guys were together when your husband fell sick and even on Jake's birthday, right? Let's get divorced. A divorce? Wait. But didn't you just say we were building a house for the 3 of us? That includes me, right? Indeed, we were in the process of building a house for 3 of us. But Sarah wasn't included in that plan. When I said 3 of us, I meant me, Jake, and my dad. What? No way. The change in environment was really stressful for me. Yes, it was because of stress. You'll forgive me, won't you? Sarah sat beside me and, without caring about the eyes around us, she cozied up with a sweet, pleading voice. While it's true that I changed our environment, that's no excuse for betraying your family. I handed Sarah the divorce affidavit and said, sign here, now. I'll demand compensation from both of you, and I'll take custody, so I'll be asking for child support too. If you don't agree, I'm prepared to take this to court, whatever it takes. No way. Understanding I was serious, Sarah, with tears streaming down her face, signed the document with shaking hands. Soon after, we officially divorced, and I was able to secure child support. Sarah found it difficult to stay at her job after this incident became known at her workplace, leading to her resignation. With nowhere else to go, she turned to the young man, but the man, furious about being sued for compensation because of her, kicked her out along with her belongings. Unable to secure a full-time job, Sarah now juggles part-time jobs, living quietly in an old apartment. I know this because Sarah insisted on giving Jake a birthday present, so I arranged a meeting at a restaurant. Just a month later, she looked completely different, her hair unkempt and her frame even thinner. "Jake, sorry I'm late. Happy birthday." With those words, Sarah handed over the gift, and Jake silently accepted and opened it. Inside was a black bag. "Do you like it? You're in elementary school now, so I chose something a bit more mature," Sarah asked in a soft voice, to which Jake replied loudly, "I don't think I'll use it, but I'll keep it." "What? Oh, Jake." "Dad, let's go home." "All right, let's go." Sarah was stunned by Jake's unexpected response. Jake and I left the restaurant, leaving Sarah behind. A husband and wife are originally strangers to each other. When two such people marry and have children, living together, there will inevitably be many things that don't go as planned. This made me think anew that couples and families must help each other to continue. 6 months later, our new home was completed. My father was discharged from the hospital and seemed to be in good health. Wow, it's beautiful. Yes, I'm glad we decided to build a new house. From now on, it will be just the three of us men living together. There might be challenges, but believe we can live by supporting each other and working together. All right, I got to keep working hard. Go for it, Dad. Around Jake's neck hung the stethoscope I had given him, a symbol of encouragement. I made a firm pledge to myself to continue working with pride and compassion in my medical profession, to be a doctor and a father Jake can always rely on, instilling in him the belief that a career in medicine is noble. Get out of my daughter's luxury apartment, you poor thing. My mother-in-law, Iris, came to our place and said that, harassing me in various ways. Iris seems to believe that it's only right for her daughter to live her life exactly as she wishes. As a mother who raised her daughter single-handedly, I can somewhat understand her feelings, but it's no excuse for her to harass me. The removal workers will be here any minute. When I told Iris that, it happened just as I said. The removal workers arrived and started taking things out. Watching things being carried out of my room, Iris turned pale, but the fact that those are moving to another room in the same apartment seemed to crush her even more. Tiffany and I started explaining about a certain person to Iris. I hope this wakes Iris up. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm a 38-year-old man with a decent fortune. Growing up, my family was quite poor, so having 3 meals a day was nothing but a dream. I only have painful memories of the times when the delicious smell from the neighbor's house made me realize it was mealtime. As a child, I used to blame my parents, wishing I was born into a normal family. Looking back, I realize it was cruel, but I was just a kid who couldn't yet understand other circumstances. Normally, I would have expected a scolding for such remarks, but my parents never got angry with me. Instead, they would often hold back from eating food so that they could give more to me. The memory of how thin they always looked makes me feel sad every time I think about it. Eat up and grow big, we're fine, my dad would say. Don't worry about anything, Michael. It's a parent's wish to see their child healthy and growing, my mom would add. By the time I was in high school, I wanted to repay the unconditional love they had shown me. But there's only so much a child can do. I tried working part-time jobs at convenience stores and delivering newspapers, but it hardly made a significant impact. So, I spent a lot of time thinking and planning for my future and work, learning from others and researching on school computers. The reason our family was poor was that both of my parents had become sick. They demonstrated leadership in a low-wage work environment, working too hard for the sake of their colleagues. As a result, they became unable to work and lost their income. Afterwards, they managed to get by on their savings, but I knew I couldn't let that cycle repeat with me. That's why I was determined not to fail in my career. For that reason, I decided not to be someone who works for others but to be someone who leads. Being just an employee wouldn't significantly increase my salary, and it would involve a lot of hardships. While some might find fulfillment in such work, and I don't mean to dismiss them, I had to aim higher for my parents' sake, so I chose to start my own business and employ others. Once I made that decision, I worked tirelessly, taking on multiple part-time jobs to save up capital for my startup. A few years after graduating high school, I established a food company, expanding its scale through strategic thinking. My smooth progress was probably thanks to networking through social media since my student days and creating a website, among other efforts. Though there were tough times, my company grew steadily. By carefully researching and catering to current trends like natural ingredients and health consciousness, I guess I've become quite successful. Now, my company has grown to such a scale that there's hardly anyone in the area who doesn't know about it. It now stands shoulder to shoulder with major corporations. Caught up in my work, when I finally took a moment to reflect, I realized I was in a position others might envy. I live on the top floor of a high-rise apartment, and I have a beautiful wife. Though there used to be no people who would call me a bottom dweller, they are also nowhere to be found now. I should feel fulfilled, but lately, I've been feeling unusually anxious. It's probably the shadow of my impoverished childhood lingering over me. That's what I thought at the time. Feeling the warm spring air as I headed to work, I was on my way to my president's room. Since the room is on the top floor of a 10-story building, it takes a while to get there. I entered the elevator, which happened to be open, and looked at my fellow passengers. I discreetly observed them, but none seemed to have health issues or appeared overworked and haggard. As a president with the power to direct others, I never wanted to manipulate people at will. Considering the motivation behind starting my business, it might seem more profitable to let employees work hard, like horses pulling carriages, without regard to their personal circumstances. However, making others unhappy to bring happiness to my parents wouldn't please them at all. My parents always put others before themselves, so they would be devastated if the company I run turned into one of those notorious sweatshops. Therefore, as someone in a leadership position, I must care for my employees to ensure my parents' happiness with honest earnings. While pondering these thoughts, an employee exclaimed, "Huh!" Looking over, I saw the male employee tilting his head, staring at his hand. I wonder where I got this injury. Strange. Observing the back of the young male employee's hand, there seemed to be a red line as if scratched by something. Perhaps the wound had opened while he was walking, as a bit of blood was starting to seep out. Seeing this, I took a handkerchief from my pocket and handed it to him. "Are you okay? Feel free to use this." Mr. Johnson, "No, it's not a serious injury." Was he lost in thought until now? The man seemed surprised to notice me and hesitated to accept the offered handkerchief. But I insisted, pushing the handkerchief into his hands. "A handkerchief is meant for moments like this. It's been feeling neglected since I haven't used it lately. Would you mind giving it a chance to be useful?" "If that's the case, I'll use it. I'll make sure to return it. Thank you so much." The elevator doors opened in front of the male employee just as he accepted the handkerchief. It seemed to be his floor to get off. After he thanked me and said goodbye, I made sure no one else was getting on before closing the elevator doors. Once I reached the top floor, I headed to the president's room. As I was setting down my belongings and pulling out my work tools, I felt my cell phone vibrate in my pocket. Checking it, I saw a message from my wife, Tiffany. The message mentioned I had forgotten something. I muttered, "Shoot," and scratched my head. I had been working on some documents at home, and in the rush this morning, I must have left them on the table. They were needed for a meeting at noon, so it would be quite problematic without them. As I was typing a message asking my wife to bring them, a second message arrived saying she had already left the house. Tiffany is an amazing wife, far too good for me. She's always attentive to details and provides solid support for others. She's always been that way, even as a child. Living nearby, she would notice whenever I was hungry and would share her snacks or invite me over for a meal with her family's leftovers. This kindness continued even through middle and high school, which is why I proposed, wanting to make such a kind person happy. I confessed my love right after graduating from high school, at a time when I hadn't yet fully escaped from poverty. Yet, Tiffany decided to walk through life with me, which is quite astonishing. I was thrilled she accepted my proposal, but I still wonder why she chose me. I hope she'll tell me one day. While picturing my loving wife's face and checking my schedule, I organized my tasks. I remembered that we had planned a home party in a few weeks, inviting acquaintances, so I needed to start preparing. It will be a fun time, inviting many friends from high school and others I'm still close with. Feeling excited about the party, my secretary, Amy, came into the room. "Your wife called earlier. I'll take care of the forgotten item, so please focus on your work, Mr. Johnson." Tiffany also knows Amy's phone number. I registered it after my phone was ruined by water damage once. Being the president, it's critical to be reachable in emergencies. My apologies for the trouble. It's part of my job, please don't worry about it. I consider myself experienced at work, but I've been making small mistakes lately, so I need to stay focused. Recently, I nearly lost some documents in a panic and accidentally broke some work equipment due to carelessness. It might be due to some minor issues in my personal life. My wife, Tiffany, has a mother named Iris. Iris, who is my mother-in-law, has been showing up frequently lately, which is quite draining. Even when I ask her reasons, she just says she wanted to see her daughter, leaving me uncertain about the correct way to handle the situation, which is the scary part. I can't directly tell her that her presence is causing me to make mistakes at work, so it's been a constant worry. "Mr. Johnson, you're holding your pen upside down." My apologies, I was lost in thought. Since she's Tiffany's mother, I'd prefer to resolve things amicably, but I wonder if my wish will come true. Then, a few days later, while relaxing in a room on an upper floor of the high-rise apartment, Iris paid us another visit. Just the thought of her coming over again so soon was disheartening. Iris tends to fuss over the smallest things. If she sees me zoning out while Tiffany is doing chores, she complains that I'm letting her do all the hard work, and if Tiffany isn't dressed up, she insinuates that I'm not earning enough to afford decent clothes. Having to politely refute or explain each time is honestly tiring. This situation could end up overwhelming me. So, Tiffany, understanding how I feel, tries to reason with her stubborn mother. "Mom, please don't come over so much, I'm fine," Tiffany pleads. "What are you talking about? You're my precious daughter." Of course, I get worried. "Do you really want to push me away even though I love you this much?" Whenever Iris talks tearfully about her deep affection for her daughter, we've had no choice but to give in. "After your father passed away, I worked hard to raise you all by myself. Raising you alone was incredibly challenging. I appreciate that, but I'm not your puppet. I have my own life. I want to live it my way. You say that, but living your way will lead you to a hellish end. If you'd just listen to me, you could be happy. Don't stay with such a poor man. Listen to me instead." Their arguments always end in a stalemate. Neither is willing to budge, so the conflict drags on for a long time. As I pondered how to calm the situation, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Iris continued speaking while casting furtive glances my way. "Tiffany, are you feeling guilty because someone from my company injured Michael's father?" The moment she heard those words, Tiffany's complexion changed instantly. All I could do was stare at her and say, "Huh? This was news to me. I had never heard anything like it before. As I looked at Tiffany, visibly shaken, she cast her gaze downward, seemingly apologetic. Did you have someone else you loved? Yet you married Michael, which I thought was strange. That's disrespectful to Michael. Tiffany, is that true? Tiffany nodded sadly. I had intended to tell you someday, she said, looking at me with a caring gaze. I accidentally overheard Mom talking on the phone with someone from her company. It seems an employee from her company, who had been drinking, caused an accident that injured your father years ago. The employee regretted driving after drinking alcohol. I'm so sorry. My dad never mentioned anything like that. The injury wasn't severe enough to break bones, but it led to his hospitalization, where they found his symptoms of overwork were more serious. But regardless of the circumstances, we caused you trouble. I reflected on our marriage with Tiffany. Come to think of it, had Tiffany ever really said she loves me? I've told her I loved her, but I'm not sure she ever reciprocated. So you married me out of pity and guilt, and have been seeing another man behind my back. I felt a mix of understanding and sadness. Despite not wanting to appear weak, tears naturally started to flow. In fact, I knew about Tiffany's infidelity but had been turning a blind eye. Wanting to understand the strange anxiety I'd been feeling lately, I had looked into Tiffany's actions, even though I felt it was wrong. As a result, I discovered that Tiffany had been frequently meeting with the other man her mother mentioned. After being informed of this fact by the detective, I interrupted him as he tried to say more, shutting out any further information. So I don't know the details about the other man. I had a handkerchief in my pocket, but using it felt like acknowledging the reality that I had cried, which I disliked. I'm sorry, that's all I can say right now. You must hate me, don't you? The shock was too great, leaving my mind unable to function properly. There were many things I needed to consider, but I couldn't organize my thoughts properly. So, the words I managed to muster up were few. I've always seen you as someone precious to me, given all the support you've provided over time. I never wanted our marriage to be based on such circumstances. Whether these were the right words to say or if there were others, I couldn't tell. I tried hard to think, but my mind seemed to have failed me. A dark atmosphere filled the room. Yet, amidst this, Iris, with a smirk, began to speak cheerfully. It seems I'm in the way. You must have a lot to discuss, so I'll take my leave now. I wanted to hear about it from Tiffany herself, despite having my own thoughts on the matter. I clenched my fists and headed to the entrance to see Iris off. I knew facing her would only upset me more, but I chose to see her off to not forget this feeling. Iris's actions, speaking carelessly about things that would hurt others just because things weren't going her way, infuriated me. As Iris put on her shoes at the entrance, she sneered at me. What a pathetic look. Crying like a child and worrying Tiffany. You're not fit to be a husband. You should just get a divorce from her. Saying this, Iris placed her hand on my shoulder. She kept smirking as if she knew all along what I would do. You must be thinking about revenge or getting back at me, but it's futile. I'm the president of a major company. When my husband passed away, I took over the company, unsure at first, but it seems I had the talent. I've managed to grow the company even more than before. Iris then pressed down harder on my shoulder, saying, "That's why." Her nails dug into my skin, causing me to wince in pain. If you make an enemy of me, someone with wide connections, your company won't survive. You wouldn't want your employees to suffer because of you, would you? At her words, all I could do was clench my fists. How powerless I felt. Unable to retaliate against the woman in front of me. A few days after seeing Iris off, Tiffany and I divorced. However, we couldn't immediately start living separately, so we were still sharing the same room. It was just when work started to get busy, leaving me no time to attend to my personal life. To add insult to injury, a letter from Iris arrived for me. Thoughtfully using the company name, perhaps to ensure Tiffany wouldn't read it. Summarizing the content of the letter, it went something like this. It stated that a person who was once poor will always remain so, and no matter how much he tries to improve his appearance, his true nature cannot be changed. And the final blow was this line. "Get out of my daughter's luxury apartment, you poor person." The straightforward message was infuriating. However, it was only natural that I would have to leave. This is because Tiffany has been paying for most of the rent for this high-rise apartment. Though Tiffany was a housewife, she had a decent income from introducing products on SNS. So, we had agreed that she would pay the rent instead of me covering her living expenses. I had accepted this arrangement, so it was only natural for me to be the one to leave. A few weeks later, as work finally gave me some breathing room, I began the moving process. Packing and arranging for removal workers was challenging, but with Tiffany's help, it went smoother than expected. Our relationship had become strained since then, but we could still talk normally when necessary and had thoroughly discussed our future. Even when she fell ill with a fever a few days ago, we cooperated and took care of each other. Despite our ability to care for each other so much, why did we have to divorce? I couldn't help but be plagued by this question. Every time, numerous questions I wanted to hear directly from Tiffany's mouth arose. What kind of person did she fall in love with? Would that person genuinely make Tiffany happy? But I was afraid to ask, fearing the answers might reveal someone better than me. If the person was indeed more outstanding and faultless, I might not be able to accept being left for such a reason. With that in mind, I had no choice but to keep quiet. In the midst of this, just as we were engaged in moving, Iris paid a visit to the house. "So, you're finally leaving this place," she remarked. "Not yet. There's a lot of stuff, so this is just the beginning. I still have more to move out, so I'll be here for a while," I replied. Seeing Iris's apparent joy, I could feel irritation rising within me. Speaking sharply, I turned my back on her, no longer wanting to engage. However, as she saw the items being moved out, Iris exclaimed, "Huh?" Wondering what could have surprised her, I looked towards the items. They were a collection of jewelry, women's bags, and clothing. "Isn't this Tiffany's stuff? Why are you moving my daughter's things?" she asked. "No, these are mine. I bought them when the company started doing well," I explained. Back then, I didn't know Tiffany's tastes well and wasn't familiar with what women liked, so I just bought whatever caught my eye. I don't do that anymore, but back when my salary first started to increase, I wasn't sure how to spend it. When I later showed them to Tiffany, suggesting she can use whatever she liked, she was quite upset. I had read somewhere that women enjoy being treated to such things by men, so I tried it, but it seems I was mistaken. Looking back, I realized that the book I had read was written from a very biased viewpoint, which was a shocking discovery. I remember Tiffany being quite angry at the time. "Did you think I married you for this? I didn't choose to be with you for a life of luxury." It took 3 days and nights of continuous apologies to finally be forgiven, but instead of returning all the items to the store, I decided to keep them at home. The staff at the store had been so happy, saying, "This is the first time our sales have gone up so much. We thought we were going to go bankrupt, but now we can keep going." I couldn't bear to bring them despair. So, after explaining all this to Iris, she turned pale and looked away. "To think you had so much money. No, you were just showing off. That's impossible. There must be some trick to it. Maybe someone gave them to you, or you were saddled with unsellable stock." Although I couldn't make out the exact words of Iris's muttering under her breath, it was clear she was in shock. Eventually, after coming to some sort of internal resolution, she turned back to face me and repeated the same phrase she had written before. "Get out of my daughter's luxury apartment, you poor person." Hearing this, I gestured towards the back, indicating the removal workers' work, as if to say she was in the way. The removal workers will be here soon. Because she wanted me gone, a sentiment that she should avoid hindering the workers seemed to get through to her. Seeing the removal workers return from loading the truck, Iris clicked her tongue and left the scene. The moving process continued to progress. However, we had to pause the work temporarily. The reason was that the day of the previously planned home party had arrived. Honestly, I wasn't in the mood for a party, but both Tiffany and I have the unfortunate tendency to prioritize others over ourselves. Thus, unable to disclose the truth about our divorce, the day arrived without our friends knowing the real situation. On that day, both Tiffany and I had to greet the steadily arriving acquaintances with feigned composure. It was quite awkward, but partway through, I managed to let go and pulled out a gaming console to play with friends, and together with Tiffany, we served the food we had prepared, enjoying the time with everyone. I couldn't help but wonder what I was doing in such a situation, but felt a bit relieved nonetheless. Perhaps it was because, with our friends around, we could revert to being a happy couple. Currently, there is no gloomy atmosphere in this room. The time spent laughing with Tiffany, just like before, was truly happy. Looking at Tiffany's smiling face, I was reminded of how much I truly loved her. Then, it was clear what I needed to do. After the divorce, I should support Tiffany in finding happiness. Despite the pain of her infidelity, the kindness she had shown me was significant, and I owed her that much. The challenge was to ensure Iris wouldn't interfere in her daughter's life, but I couldn't come up with a good solution on my own. Perhaps it was time to confide in our friends and seek their assistance. As I was pondering this, the doorbell rang, making me tilt my head in confusion. After all, everyone I had invited should already be inside this room. Could it be a neighbor, or perhaps a delivery person who got the wrong address? Opening the door with this thought, I found Iris standing there. After making a bombshell statement in front of us and sending a letter that felt like harassment, I didn't expect her to still come here. What could possibly be going on in her mind? I came to see how my daughter is doing, but oh, do you have guests? Stepping into the entrance, Iris was surprised to see several pairs of shoes. I wonder if I'm intruding. Even Iris, who always seems to intrude on us, seemed uncomfortable in a space filled with strangers. I wish she could apply that bit of common sense to other aspects of her behavior, but trying to understand her thought process is probably a waste of time. Noticing the commotion in the room, Iris quickly tried to leave, but a friend stopped her. Friends who gathered at the entrance to see the visitor introduced themselves one after another to Iris. "Are you Tiffany's mother? Nice to meet you. I work for a website development company." "Oh, I work in social media management. What brings you here today?" Faced with a barrage of questions from many people, Iris looked bewildered, not knowing how to respond. Feeling slightly vindicated by her discomfiture, I pondered how to get Iris to leave. It's rare to see her at a loss, and part of me wanted to watch a bit longer, but it would be troublesome if she said something unnecessary like last time. So, I was about to speak up, but Iris beat me to it. "Everyone, I have something to talk about, would you listen?" On guard about what she might do, it seemed she wanted to talk about Tiffany's boyfriend. I and Tiffany know someone named Jake. He's a wonderful person. Wealthy, gentlemanly, elegant, and young in his 20s. He looks like he stepped right out of a movie. Those gathered took her friend bragging as the start of a story and seemed interested in hearing more, but I thought it best to stop her. Catching a glimpse of me, Iris smirked as if she had something mischievous in mind. She's probably up to no good, so I want to stop her from speaking if possible. I start to say, "Iris, don't you have other matters to attend to?" But she firmly replied, "It's all right. Jake looks great standing next to Tiffany. Look at this photo. Wouldn't you want someone like him as a marriage partner? What do you all think about your ideal spouse?" Iris showed us photos taken on her cell phone, and her face lit up with a look of triumph. It seemed she was trying to corner me mentally. Even though she doesn't take such an action, I'm already set on divorcing Tiffany. Friends commented on the youthful man in the photos, sharing their thoughts. He looks good, but it's important to be with someone you love. Right? No matter how perfect someone might seem, marrying for love is what matters most. Iris, showing her phone screen to those around her, frowned in confusion. What are you saying? Love alone won't make you happy. For example, Michael might be well off now, but he came from poverty. Isn't that worrying? Oh, I don't mean this as an insult, just curious about your opinions. Seeing that the conversation wasn't going as she had hoped, Iris expressed her opinion with a dissatisfied look on her face. However, no one agreed with her viewpoint. Life is unpredictable for anyone. If that's the case, it's best to be with someone you love. Even if someone meets all the criteria, marrying without love is unfair to the other person. Of course, love doesn't guarantee everything will work out, just as money doesn't. Iris furrowed her brows and bit her lip. It seemed she had many grievances, but she had no intention of voicing them to the others. Actually, I remembered I have an errand to run today. I'll take my leave now. Seemingly upset, Iris quickly left. After she left, friends who had come to say goodbye returned to the room, but then Iris took out a few cloves of garlic. Well, I should be going, but Michael, you really should think about Tiffany's happiness and leave her as soon as possible. After saying this, Iris put the garlic inside my shoes and threw some toward me before leaving the entrance. Witnessing her blatantly obvious actions, I was paralyzed and couldn't move. As a result, the clove of garlic hit me. It was amusing to see Iris at a loss for words and flustered by my friend's rebuttals, but the price with being hit by the garlic was disheartening. Tiffany, who had stayed behind instead of following the others, hurriedly asking me whether I am okay or not with an apologetic look. I'm sorry about my mother. It's not your fault. I should have moved, but I was too stunned to react. After picking up some cloves of garlic, I sighed and headed back to join my friends. Joining the circle of friends who were chatting a few minutes later, I received curious looks. A clove of garlic still in my hair drew wide-eyed stares from my friends, but unable to explain properly, I mumbled something vague instead. Curious about the images they were looking at on a cell phone, I quickly changed the subject. What's that? Upon asking, it turned out they were looking at images on Jake's social media. They got curious because of what Iris had said and decided to check it out immediately. The face on the cell phone screen was indeed the same one Iris had shown us earlier. He seemed to be quite wealthy, with numerous luxury items and travel photos on his social media, including several shots of a high-end room filled with elegant furniture. However, something about those photos felt off to me. It was a room I recognized all too well. My friends seemed to notice it too. Tiffany addressed me as their spokesperson. Michael, isn't this one of the rooms in our apartment building? Yeah, I remember it from helping another resident move. I've been inside that room. Our building's interiors vary slightly from floor to floor and room to room, so no two are exactly alike, but the basic layout is the same, which is why it clicked. Hey, someone's posted something strange on this guy's social media, a friend pointed out. Amidst my skepticism, I was taken aback when I saw the comment my friend had discovered. It contained crucial information about Jake's true identity. I rushed after Iris. Fortunately, she hadn't left the building yet. I managed to catch her at the entrance. What's the matter? You seem in such a hurry. Did I forget something? I had to tell Iris, who was tilting her head in confusion in front of me, about Jake's true identity. Iris, Jake is a marriage con artist. I wished to spare Tiffany from this conversation, but it seems she followed me. Catching up from behind, she spoke to Iris. Mom, you're being deceived. Please, wake up. Hearing that, I felt a strong sense of discomfort and asked Tiffany. She was supposed to have been deceived just like her mother, yet she didn't seem shocked at all. Weren't you in love with Jake? Not at all. I only started talking to him because he picked up the precious handkerchief you gave me when I dropped it. Tiffany apologized in a small voice. I'm sorry. She must have thought I wouldn't believe her right after her secret was revealed. Since then, she hadn't found the right moment to tell me, so she kept silent. Relieved that she wasn't cheating, I felt slightly at ease. Let's talk about that later. Listen, Mom. Jake has been involved in other scams, often tricking acquaintances into buying expensive items. Has he sold you anything? Surprised by the sudden topic, Iris was quite candid. Yes, he introduced me to vases and paintings. No way. When Tiffany showed her Jake's social media on her cell phone, reading the victim's comments turned her pale. Was I wrong? It seems he pretended to be wealthy using items he scanned from others, and those house photos, they're from a showroom. Look closely. They all lack a personal touch. Realizing this, Iris stared at the photos lacking any personal belongings before collapsing to her knees. Having visited our apartment many times, she quickly recognized the photos on social media as being from our place. See, Mom, having money doesn't guarantee happiness. I only wanted what's best. To think I was wrong, I'm a failure as a mother. Tiffany didn't offer any more comforting words to her. If you understand, then stop imposing your views on me. I'll seize my own happiness. I'll live the life I choose. Knowing her mother's pride, she likely wanted her to reflect properly instead of offering empty consolation. After witnessing her mother's continuous tears, all she did was hand her a handkerchief to hold. Without hugging or wiping her tears, she returned to the room. I'm sorry for using the handkerchief you gave me on my mom. You've been troubled by her for so long, she apologized. No, it's fine. I got to see quite a bit of her troublesome side today, and besides, that handkerchief was the first gift I ever gave you. I was happy to see you've kept it with care all this time, I responded. We divorced to live our own lives. Iris's actions may have been the catalyst, but we won't overturn this decision for each other's sake. Tiffany had kept important things from me, and I failed to see through her secrets. Moreover, I even suspected her of cheating. Perhaps our paths will cross again someday, but for now, we must live separately, pondering over the mistakes we've made. Afterward, Iris seemed to return home in a state of exhaustion. Her behavior became unexpectedly subdued in the following days, as if her previous actions were all a lie. Unable to perform her duties as president satisfactorily anymore, it seems she retired. After moving to some rural area, she appears to be living quietly on her own, cutting off interactions with others. Later, we received an apology letter from her. We hadn't replied yet since we're not ready to forgive, but we hope to reach that point someday. Meanwhile, we started living in separate homes. After completing the move and informing our friends about the divorce, I spent my time alone, reflecting on various things. However, that solitude didn't last long. Tiffany joined my company as an employee, so we ended up seeing each other on work days. Our relationship as boss and subordinate was different from before, but those days weren't too bad. I was surprised when she eventually took over Amy's position as my secretary after she left, but even so, we enjoyed our days together. Tiffany, always attentive to details, excelled at supporting others. Mr. Johnson, you have a bird's feather in your hair. Did you help a fallen chick back into its nest like you did when you were a child? Here. It's gone now, she noted. Thanks. I hadn't noticed, but it's surprising you remember something from so long ago, I remarked. Our relationship may have ended, but I cherished every moment spent with you. They're all precious memories to me. Oh, and you're holding your pen upside down, she pointed out. Thus, she continued to assist me in my daily work. On my next day off, I plan to take my parents on a trip. I'm also planning to rebuild their house, which will be busy but something I look forward to. Despite the hardships and pain, knowing that collaboration can help overcome challenges, I decided to always value the connections with others, no matter what form they may take. Stupid brat, just stick to your work. Look at this bus seating chart. You don't have a seat. I submitted the attendance with you marked as not participating. You're better off surrounded by new cars at our dealership, aren't you? I'm pretty thoughtful, huh? During the company trip organized for the new employees, I found out I was the only one without a seat on the bus. When I confronted my manager, Ken, he scoffed and said that to me. I will enjoy it instead of you. To add insult to injury, that's what he said, further shocking me. Since it was too late to make a new reservation to join the company trip, I had no choice but to reluctantly return to the dealership. However, later on at the luxury hotel where the company trip was taking place, the president was frantically asking the arriving employees, "Has anyone seen my son? My name is Kyle. I've loved cars since I was little, just like my father, who was also a car enthusiast. He was incredibly knowledgeable about cars and would always take me for a ride in any car I said, 'I want to try driving that car.' He exposed me to various car models from a young age. I grew up looking up to my father. He taught me about cars, and I eagerly absorbed the knowledge. We visited car museums numerous times, creating many happy memories through our shared love of cars. My love for cars began not just because of my father, but also from the stories he shared about his past. My father grew up with a car-loving father as well. That's my grandfather. In the post-war ruins, the sight of cars zooming by captivated him, symbolizing reconstruction and sparking his fascination with personal vehicles. My grandfather decided he wanted to work with cars and dedicated his life to being a mechanic. Both my father and I were deeply inspired and influenced by my grandfather's way of life. The cars being sold today are becoming increasingly environmentally friendly. Thinking about the future made me strongly desire to work for a car dealership that prioritizes the sale of low-emission vehicles. I believed that by promoting such cars, I could contribute to America's environment in the coming years. In other words, I was excited about the possibility of playing a part in ushering in a new era for cars. As time went by, I went on to study business administration in college. Do you have a type of girl you like, Kyle? A type I like? No, not really. I'm often told that I carry myself with a lot of confidence. A few girls ask me out, and not to brag, but I've been quite popular with the ladies. However, throughout college, I didn't really focus on dating, just concentrated on my studies and part-time jobs. In the lab, my passion for cars shone through in my research on the future of cars and the economy, earning me the departmental award. I simply love cars, and no amount of knowledge ever seems enough. So, it wasn't so much that I couldn't slack off in my studies, I just couldn't. During my part-time job, I spent my days learning the ropes of customer service at a high-end Italian restaurant. Upon graduating from the university, I was hired by a car dealership that has stores throughout the state. Most new graduates were assigned to sales at a new car dealership. I was one of them. My 4 years of experience in Italian dining greatly benefited my customer service skills, allowing me to dive smoothly into the job. Being a car enthusiast and constantly gathering information, I came into the job with a wealth of product knowledge. Thanks to this, I quickly stood out among the new recruits with my exceptional sales performance. Kyle, you're amazing. Could you teach me about cars too, please? Hey, no fair jumping the queue. Kyle, teach me too. Of course. My hard-working nature won me a lot of affection from my seniors. Some of the seniors, close in age to me, even came to me for information on new cars. Asking the same questions to a boss might get them scolded, but they could ask me as much as they wanted without any trouble, and they even complimented me on my clear explanations. Kyle, I heard from the seniors that you're good at teaching. Would you mind teaching me too? Sure thing. Awesome. I'll treat you to something next time. Ellie, who joined the company at the same time and was assigned to the same store, often came to me for product advice. Ellie was particularly interested in environmental performance. But loving cars doesn't mean I know everything. As a salesperson, just knowing about cars isn't enough. I wasn't very familiar with things like installment plans or special credit card benefits, so Ellie and I studied those together, asking seniors when necessary. Spending time with Ellie, it's just so fun. This must be what love feels like. I never knew it could be this exhilarating. As I worked hard alongside Ellie, I gradually developed feelings for her. But I couldn't find the right moment to confess of my love, and we remained just friends. Sorry, I accidentally touched your hand. Did it hurt? No, I'm fine. Don't worry. There was a moment when our hands touched while studying, and Ellie seemed a bit embarrassed. Seeing that, I hoped Ellie felt the same about me and vowed to confess to her someday. However, there was one person at the store who didn't think too highly of me. That was our manager, Ken. He labeled me, someone knowledgeable, as a know-it-all brat with no real experience, and was a boss who frequently harassed me. Kyle, could you finish this up right now, please? What? But it's past closing time. For example, he would dump work on me just as I was about to leave, steal customers I was servicing, or not distribute new car brochures to me, among other harassments. The more I thought about it, the more stressful it became, but I endured it without complaining to higher-ups. That was until the annual company trip in spring. Our company has a tradition of organizing an employee trip every spring, partly to welcome new hires. Each year we take turns assigning an employee to look after each store, but new hires are absolutely expected to participate in the trip since they are in a position to be welcomed. New employees like Ellie and me were guaranteed to participate. Excited at the chance to confess to Ellie, I eagerly awaited the trip and headed to the meeting place. When I arrived at the company parking lot, the designated meeting place, no one else was there yet. Looking at my watch, I realized I was 30 minutes early. It seems I had arrived too early in my eagerness. As I waited impatiently for the others, Ken was the next to arrive. Despite the numerous harassments I had endured from Ken, I naively thought he wouldn't harass me on the day of the employee trip, so I cheerfully greeted him with a good morning. However, Ken's response left me speechless. Upon noticing me, Ken immediately flashed a distasteful grin and flaunted a document in front of me. I had a bad feeling about this. What are you doing here? Get back to work, brat. Take a look at this bus seating chart. You don't have a seat. I submitted your part as not participating. You'd be happier surrounded by new cars at the store, right? I'm quite thoughtful, aren't I? My bad feeling was spot on, and Ken chose the day of the employee trip of all days to fully indulge in harassing me. I snatched the seating chart from Ken and took a closer look. But indeed, my name was nowhere to be found. Moreover, it turned out I was the only one not booked at the luxury hotel. Shocked by such an extent of malice and realizing I couldn't confess my love to Ellie, I felt desperate. The shock led me to doubt if I was actually disliked by everyone. On the day, thinking that it wouldn't make a difference to argue with Ken, I decided to leave, disappointed. Understood. Then I'll head back to the store. Jerry, do that. I'll enjoy the trip twice as much on your behalf. Ken taunted me as I left, deepening my dejection. When I moved and entered the store, a senior, who was on duty, worriedly asked, why are you here? What happened to the trip? Embarrassed to be seen with my packed belongings, I sheepishly responded, sorry, I'm feeling a bit unwell. May I rest in the break room for a bit? He kindly led me to the break room, showing concern for my well-being. Feeling guilty for making up an illness and worrying my senior, I couldn't bring myself to tell the truth. I emphasized to the senior, I've informed Ken that I won't be able to board the bus, so there's no need to report. Anticipating that the caring senior might report to Ken, I took the initiative to prevent any contact between them. The kind senior, not doubting me, reassured, "Got it. Don't worry about anything. Just rest up. You can always join the trip later once you feel better." I felt terribly guilty towards the kind senior, but this was to avoid causing unnecessary commotion because of me. I wished all the other new employees and staff to purely enjoy the trip. Then, after pretending to rest for a while, I decided to drive to the coastal town, the trip destination, in my car. I resolved to pay my own way to stay at the same hotel as everyone else. Before setting off, I inquired with a luxury hotel about any last-minute availability. Fortunately, there was a room available, so I was able to book a stay. Though the expense was significant, I had savings, so it was manageable as I drove on. I imagined everyone at the hotel unpacking or enjoying the stay, which made me feel down again. But there was no point in dwelling on sadness. I decided to stop by a restaurant known for its delicious fisherman's cuisine along the way to lift my spirits. Meanwhile, at the luxury hotel, President Carter was asking around, "Has anyone seen my son?" as he looked for his missing son among the employees. The new employees were confused, asking, "Your son? Who might that be?" as it was news to them. Even the staff from the store where his son worked were puzzled, responding with, "Huh," not knowing whom he referred to. Then, he received a phone call. After listening to the call, he seemed relieved and told everyone that it was all sorted out before heading back to his room. Without that cheeky Kyle around, I can enjoy this trip to the fullest. It's like I'm the king of the world. Pleased with himself, Ken muttered under his breath before leading his subordinates into the spa and enjoying beers, fully relishing the luxury hotel's offerings. Meanwhile, Ellie seemed worried, as there was no sign of me anywhere. When she texted me, I replied, "Don't worry, I'll join you later." Seeing that response, Ellie felt relieved for the moment. Perhaps it was the enjoyable conversation with a colleague she hadn't seen in a while that made Ellie not pursue the reason for my tardiness any further. And then the evening party began. First, a toast led by President Carter. After that, he spoke about last year's business performance and the goals for this year. Later, he said, "This spring, my son joined a company, so let me introduce him. Come on in," urging his son to enter the room. The one who walked through the door and into the banquet hall was me. Seeing a familiar face, the employees murmured among themselves as I reintroduced myself to everyone. "Once again, my name is Kyle Carter. I apologize for keeping it a secret that I am his son. I plan to rotate through the new car dealership, used car dealership, luxury car showroom, and then to the headquarters management division, so I'd appreciate any guidance you can offer." After finishing my introduction, the employees gave me a round of applause. I was surprised by the loud applause, but it seemed like a warm welcome. All except for one person. My gaze fixed on one point only. Ken, who just found out that I was President's son, started to tremble. It's understandable, considering the harassment he had subjected me to, and now it was too late for regrets. After all, why did you join in halfway through? After the party, my father asked why I joined in halfway, and I decided to give up hiding it any longer and told him everything. A few hours later, after my father learned the truth and it was past midnight, Ken was called into my father's room. Ken, who had a hunch why he was summoned, was sweating profusely and clearly agitated. My father cast a sharp gaze at Ken. I was surprised at first. I couldn't see my son, who was supposed to be at the hotel, and when I asked the employees, they said my son hadn't told anyone he was my son. I thought it wasn't necessary to talk about myself. When I made that excuse, my father then cast a sharp look at me. It seemed best not to interject any further. "But still, Ken, you know that it's a rule that all new employees must participate, right? Yet, it seems you deliberately excluded my son, regardless of him being my son, Excluding an important new employee from a welcoming trip for new employees is a serious offense. My father scolded Ken, who couldn't even raise his head in shame. A person like that cannot hold a leadership position. Await further instructions. Ken, having heard this from my father, seemed unable to accept it and retorted, "Please wait, President Carter. Surely, a dismissal is too severe. And do you have any evidence that I harassed your son?" Without seeing any evidence, I simply cannot agree. With all due respect, I have never once harassed your son. Ken confidently stated his case, seemingly revitalized by the lack of evidence shown to him. It seems he's determined to cling to his position in the company, despite the threat of dismissal. However, my father remained unexpectedly calm, as if he had anticipated such a reaction. This calmness suggested as if he knew evidence existed. I'm not aware of any evidence, but could there really be something? This thought makes me anxious. All I've done is endure Ken's harassment without any means to prove it. Moreover, today was the first time I confided in my father about Ken's harassment. Could it be that my father knew about it before I even told him? As I was caught up in my swirling thoughts, my father said, "Indeed. But if it's evidence you're looking for, we have it, miss. Could you please call her in?" He requested the female secretary nearby. The secretary acknowledged with a certainly and left the room. Wondering who she would bring, a knock on the door followed a few minutes later, and the secretary returned, announcing, "President Carter, I have brought her." Please come in," my father replied, inviting the person inside as the door opened. The gazes of the three people in the room then focused on the newcomer. "Excuse me." I was taken aback when I heard a familiar voice. To my surprise, it was Ellie who entered the room nervously with the female secretary. "I'm sorry to have called you here while everyone was asleep," my father said. "No, not at all. I'm doing this for Kyle," Ellie responded. "Ellie, why are you here?" I was surprised by the unexpected person entering the room. It was Ellie conversing with my father. Seeing my surprise, Ellie gave me a gentle smile. "Actually, I've been hearing from her about the harassment you've been enduring from Ken. We asked for her cooperation to secure evidence this time," my father explained. "I'm sorry, Kyle. I knew about it but couldn't help you right away," Ellie apologized. "No, it's my fault for getting you involved." Ellie's appearance was so shocking that I became awkward. My father looked at us, both being considerate of each other, with a bemused smile. "Since when had Ellie been collaborating with you, Dad?" "Securing evidence? What are you talking about?" "There's no escaping it now, Ken. I saw with my own eyes you harassing Kyle, and at that moment, I instinctively started recording with my phone's camera," Ellie stated. Ellie then took out her phone and pointed it at a flustered Ken. The video on the screen showed the interaction between Ken and me from this morning. "What are you doing here? Get back to work, brat. Take a look at this bus seating chart. You don't have a seat. I submitted your part as not participating. You'd be happier surrounded by new cars at the store, right? I'm quite thoughtful, aren't I?" Seeing Ken mockingly flashing the seating chart at me again fills me with anger. I wonder if my reaction would have been different if I had allowed myself to show even a trace of anger back then. This is valid evidence, isn't it, Ken? Additionally, I stand as a witness. If you ask around, it's likely that others who have seen you harassing Kyle regularly will come forward. I witnessed it by chance, not just today but on another occasion. That's why I decided to consult with President Carter this time. What do you think? Can you still deny your actions? As the video ended and we had witnessed the entire incident, we awaited Ken's response. Pressed by the steady words of my father and Ellie, Ken was sweating profusely and fell silent, but apparently unable to admit his wrongdoing. He spoke up again. "I admit to what I said in the video. However, had I known he was your son, I wouldn't have harassed him. Doesn't the fault lie with you guys for not disclosing this?" Ken's argument was clearly an attempt to shift the blame. My father, with a sigh, decisively cut through Ken's excuse. Are you seriously making that argument? So, if informed, you refrain from harassment, but if not, you see it as acceptable to harass. That's absurd. What does that say about your character, let alone as an employee? Well, that's... My goodness, if you can't understand something as basic as this, then you are fundamentally flawed as a person. Please reconsider your actions. Having had enough, my father sent Ken out of the room. Ken walked down the dimly lit corridor with his head hung low and eventually collapsed, as if crumbling to the ground. It seems that my father's words struck him deeply, leaving him in a daze in a corner of the hallway until the other employees noticed him the next morning. I expressed my gratitude to Ellie and my father for securing the evidence. Despite everything, it seems we were able to end the trip with smiles, which felt good. A couple of days after returning from the trip, a notice was posted on the company's bulletin board. Ken had been stripped of his managerial role and demoted to a low-level employee in the warehouse section, which is considered a low-profile department in our company. Rumors suggested he considered resigning but felt compelled to stay at the company to provide for his family. You know, I was surprised when Ellie, who's close to you, suddenly visited my office to say that Ken was harassing you. She seemed so desperate. I immediately thought, she must like Kyle, my father said. I panicked when he said that. What are you talking about, Dad? Ellie and I are just colleagues, and there's no way you could know if Ellie feels that way about me. My attempt to clarify things seemed to backfire. My father, suspecting something more between Ellie and me, grinned mischievously. That reaction of yours, does it mean you like Ellie too? I get it, she's a good girl, but with you acting like this, I guess you haven't asked her out yet. Mind your own business, Dad. That's not true. Hurry up and get married to put my mind at ease. Marriage? You're jumping way ahead. We're not even dating yet. Haha, so you do want to date Ellie. Kyle, you're so easy to read. He laughed heartily. Though I regretted my response, I felt as if he was encouraging me to confess to Ellie. Good luck, Kyle. He cheered me on with a big smile, and I felt a mix of emotions but said no more. After the trip ended, I became somewhat distant from Ellie, especially after revealing that I was President's son. I can't help but feel remorseful, thinking that she must be angry with me for keeping silent. I keep worrying that I should have told Ellie about it from the start. Despite Ellie helping me with Ken, I scolded myself, thinking I shouldn't be like this and needed to muster up courage. I wanted to apologize and have Ellie forgive me. During a break, I called Ellie out, took her outside, and energetically apologized. Sorry for not telling you I was President Carter's son. Ellie was surprisingly not upset and asked, why apologize? I wasn't avoiding talking to you because I was angry, but because I thought it might be rude to be too familiar with someone of a different status. She explained, and I realized it was all just a misunderstanding, which truly relieved me. There's no need for that. I hope we can continue to be good friends. I expressed this earnestly, feeling my heart race. Though I hadn't managed to confess during the trip, now I felt brave enough to continue speaking. I like you, Ellie. Would you consider going out with me, despite everything? I went ahead with the confession, but the wait for her response felt incredibly long. When I confessed to her, Ellie was surprised and a bit shy. My hopes rose, but then Ellie said in a soft voice, I need a little time to answer. I promise I'll get back to you, before running off back to her work. Even there, I couldn't help but think that Ellie's inability to respond immediately was due to my inadequacy. Months later, as scheduled, I was transferred to a used car dealership. I said my goodbyes to everyone at the car dealership, expressing my gratitude for their support, and then left the store. Feeling dejected, I realized that I had been rejected by Ellie since there had been no response or progress since my confession. The shock was so intense that I even started hearing what seemed like Ellie calling out to me, almost like an auditory hallucination. Kyle. As the voice became clearer, I came back to reality and turned around. Hearing the voice calling me from afar, I looked behind. To my surprise, I saw Ellie, despite wearing heels and a skirt suit, running towards me at full speed. "Ellie, what's going on?" The answer is yes. Sorry for the late reply. Considering the potential responsibility of becoming a president's wife made it hard to respond quickly, she said with a smile upon reaching me. Seeing her like that filled my heart to the brim. This meant that Ellie chose to walk the path with me over the daunting responsibility of becoming a president's wife. "You still chose me despite everything. Thank you, truly. I'll make sure you never have to worry about any responsibilities because I'll take good care of you. Really? Promise me, Kyle." Ellie called my name with a full smile and offered her pinky. Caught in the moment, I laughed and linked my pinky with hers, making a promise. Years after we officially became a couple, I went from working at a used car dealership to a luxury car dealership, eventually joining a corporate management team. Despite the challenges of continuously learning new tasks and knowledge, I was driven by a desire to know everything about the company and work tirelessly. Ellie was always there to support me, bringing me snacks and encouragement. As we continued dating, we started living together and even began thinking about marriage. Sometimes I'd daydream about Ellie in a wedding dress, so much so that I'd get reprimanded by my boss, showing just how well things were going between us. The thought of wanting children and wondering who they'd resemble or whether we'd have a boy or a girl was inevitable. Needless to say, getting scolded by my boss again for daydreaming at work was a given. Then, a few more years passed. In the year I turned 30, I was promoted to executive vice president. While being the president's son was a significant factor in my promotion, my hard work and achievements across various departments and stores were also recognized, making my colleagues genuinely celebrate my promotion. Even in my new role as executive vice president, I remained humble, never forgetting my roots, and continued to be passionate about cars. Of course, I was also determined to support my father, the president, who had been a tremendous mentor to me. Sometimes my father would jokingly ask about marriage with Ellie or express his desire to see his grandchildren, but I could feel his love and was overwhelmed with emotion. Cars always filled my thoughts. Now, it seemed my father was equally consumed with thoughts about my future. A few more years later, as if to fulfill my father's wishes, Ellie and I finally got married. My father cried tears of joy, deeply moved by the occasion, making me feel like I had truly honored my parents. At work, Ellie started addressing any concerns that employees might find difficult to express directly to me, effectively taking on the role of the future president's wife. Together, we pledged to further build up the company, supporting each other along the way. Inspired by my father's example, I made this vow while watching his back,